We're joined next by Austin Russell, founder and CEO of Luminar, and Alexandr Wang, CEO and founder of Scale AI. Austin is an engineer, entrepreneur, and Lidar industry pioneer for autonomous vehicles. He founded Luminar in 2012 with a mission to usher in a new era of vehicle safety and autonomy. After years of ground-up technology development and breakthroughs, he has grown into a global public company working with 50 industry partners, including the majority of global automotive OEMs. From Volvo Cars and Mercedes-Benz for consumer vehicles and Daimler Trucks for commercial trucks to tech partners NVIDIA and Intel's Mobileye, Luminar is poised to be the first automotive technology company to enable next-generation safety and autonomous capabilities for production vehicles. Please welcome to the stage Austin Russell and Alexandr Wang.
Hey, Austin.
Hey, how's it
you?
going?
Good. Thanks for coming.
Of course. This is awesome.
So we wanted to actually start out by announcing a partnership between Scale and Luminar. So Scale and Luminar are going to work together to enable a future of safer cars and ultimately save lives. And I'd love to hear a few words from you about what you see the potential of our partnership to be.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'm excited to work with you guys for at least a few years now too, and then finally coming to a head of where we're doubling down, going all in on from both a data labeling standpoint, exclusively with these guys, and then also the whole Scale applied AI suite. So exciting to see that all come to fruition, and it's going to play a big part of the future. And of course, a lot of what we've done at Luminar is surrounding the Lidar and the developments there for providing the foundation of kind of the next generation safety and autonomy for a lot of the major automakers out there. But it's as much anything a software problem as it is a hardware problem, of course. So that's where that all comes into play, and excited to see this through to fruition and making its way out into consumers' hands.
Yeah, so I wanted to start just by kind of talking through what you've done at Luminar, which I'm sure many folks in the audience are familiar with, but some may not be. Luminar is the leading Lidar company. Lidar obviously being a new form of sensor that is critical for both autonomy but also for safety, which has really been the key focus of Luminar recently. And you've been working on this technology basically your whole life. When did you start? How old were you when you started Luminar?
I was like 16 around, maybe just turning 17 when I first started there too. Got a little bit of a head start even before then with, when I was like 10, 11, was always working in between software and hardware and computing systems, everything. But I think it became pretty clear that optics, photonics, and laser systems were going to hopefully be to the 21st century of kind of what electronics were to the 20th century and ride that curve in terms of innovation. And that, of course, next-gen safety and autonomy was the big play for that really went all in on.
Yeah, so why don't we walk through this sort of the journey of your company in terms of actually becoming probably one of the leading companies in ushering in this sort of next generation of safety. You obviously have a big partnership with Volvo, the car company known for having safe vehicles, originally invented the seat belt, and are now sort of deploying Luminar technology to make even safer cars than the rest of the market. How did you end up in building these LiDAR sensors? What do you think the potential of them are? And what do you think the potential is particularly for saving lives?
Yeah. So, and I think that's the big bet, that you had to make early on, is that focus around getting this into production consumer vehicles. We're a completely different kind of business than maybe what you see for the different robo-taxis that are, the test vehicles roaming around San Francisco, which, is awesome to be able to see. The objective there is more about replacing the driver altogether for a ride-hailing, Uber-like point A to point B application, in urban environments. In this case, it's leveraging, the existing automotive industry, the $4 trillion a year consumer car business that we can be able to get embedded into. And it's not about replacing the driver, off the bat here. It's about enhancing the safety features and ultimately enabling autonomy in more constrained conditions like highway scenarios. So, but of course, that's where all these different things have to converge. You have to be able to have extreme performance out of these LiDAR systems. It's got to cost not tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's got to cost hundreds of dollars. And all these different things had to converge to make this happen. So, the first 5 years of the business, we were deep in stealth mode, building out some of the core technology from the chip level up. the last 5 years, really been focused on commercialization, industrialization, and getting to scale as well. So that's been good. And yeah, I mean, Volvo's have been great there. They've been leading the safety charge since the invention of the modern seatbelt. And actually, they're going to be announcing the first vehicle with Luminar they have as a flagship lineup that has where every vehicle of this flagship kind will be powered by Luminar. Actually just coming up around the corner on November 9th in Sweden, so that'll be fun as well.
We'll all be there. We'll get the cars, and we'll never ever crash again.
Exactly, the uncrashable car. That's the key.
The uncrashable car. Well, one thing that's just so incredibly impressive, and I think is you're very humble, and so it's kind of understated when you walk through it, but it is very, very challenging to build anything that makes it into the production cycle for a large-scale automotive vehicle. And it's so rare for any company to build the technology that actually makes it to those vehicles, just given the high testing requirements and the safety requirements, and let alone for any startups. I think it's exceptionally rare for any startup to be able to accomplish that. What do you think has enabled Luminar to do that?
Yeah, no, it's been good. I mean, very, very high barrier to entry to get into the consumer vehicle business because everything has to be. You can't hack stuff together. You have to spend years and years preparing auto grade components throughout the entire supply chain. The way your entire company operates can't operate like a traditional Silicon Valley company. So it's really where you have to be able to just focus all in on how you're going to build something that can last a decade in a rigorous environment. And automakers are some of the most difficult but also rewarding to work with. So breaking through was key to making that happen. And focusing on industrialization early on, building the hardware, building the lasers, building receivers, scanners, processing electronics, all the chips from the ground up has been key to making that happen, kind of controlling that supply chain. So big investments early on. I mean, it's probably approaching on the order of a couple billion, for us at this point now. So it's in terms of total capital that we brought in. So lot left to do, but I think we've been leading the pack there, and it's really it's kind of funny. Someone made the comment to me the other day. I think there's only 2 companies that have been able to break into this industry of into the consumer car business from in the last couple of decades, and I think it was NVIDIA and us. So it's cool to see, and we're also working with those guys too, so help make it happen. So NVIDIA
is a good company to be in.
Yeah, they're great business. Just saw Jensen last night, and he's just that guy is making it happen. It's impressive.
Making it happen, and a lot of what we've talked about today in terms of AI progress has been ushered in by them, obviously.
Yeah.
Maybe taking a kind of step back and thinking about the LiDAR sensor as an individual sensor, maybe help explain to the audience why is the LiDAR sensor so critical, and why is it so critical for not only enabling autonomy, which is maybe one of the things that a lot of the world has gotten very excited about, but also enabling the sort of next level of safety for these consumer vehicles.
Yeah. So I think the key is people generally associated LiDAR with bridging the gap to being able to enable autonomy. Of course, you don't need a LiDAR system for a basic assisted driving technology out there today, like the Mobileye example. They've done very well in the automotive industry. Being able to provide kind of assisted driving features among other types of companies and automakers that provide assisted driving features on cars that ship today, a lot of the Tesla autopilots and other stuff this world, and every automaker's version of that and the Mobileye version of that's now on, like I said, the majority of new vehicles shipped. So with that said, the key is that what we saw as the application is not just enabling the autonomy aspect of that, which it's fundamentally needed for by having that 3D understanding of the environment, but also the safety angle. And I think there was this idea some time ago that maybe autonomy was going to be a lot easier than it actually turned out to be there too, which may be why I've been sort of the chief skeptic, within the industry as well. It's a very, very hard problem. But the thing is that it's all about the accuracy and reliability. Solving for the 99% is easy. It's always that last 1%, and then the 0.1%, and then the 10 nines that you have to solve. Beyond that to get the reliability that's just so unique to this application. Because I'm sure with a lot of stuff that you do, if you have 99.9% accuracy, that's pretty good. But if you run over one out of every 1,000 people you see, that's also not good in the car industry. So so that's where you really have to take a completely different perspective. So with this, from a camera standpoint, which is kind of the foundation and radar system there today, they're really good at getting to the 99%. The hard part is having the confidence that you really, really know something is there. And that's why I think it came as a huge surprise to many, both within the industry and outside of the industry especially, that if you take the majority of new vehicles and literally just just drive it straight towards an object, like right in front of you, like the most basic, simple case, like it'll like plow right through it, whether a person or whatever it may be. It's not an easy problem. It's really automatic emergency braking features and collision avoidance features are meant for very specific instances, and not to try and prevent all accidents, but rather reduce the severity of accidents. And the whole goal with this is, how do we actually prevent accidents in the first place? Understanding that there's still 1.3 million lives lost every year due to vehicle accidents globally, and it's the leading cause of death, I think, by some metrics between ages 1 and 44, which is just mind-blowing to think about as a totally solvable problem of don't let your car smash into the thing right in front of you. But that's the whole point of where the Lidar comes into play, is that when you have that centimeter level precision understanding of everything around you in 3D with this level of capability and seeing out, in our case, pretty much anything out to 250 meters and max out to even 500 meters, that makes all the difference. And that's the driver, in addition to the autonomy case, though, why automakers are starting to standardize this kind of technology. And not just Volvo there too, but even more mainstream automakers like Nissan, for example. I think their CEO went to say that they're going to try and put this on all new vehicles they produce by 2030. So that's as much the safety problem as it is the autonomy problem, and that's really where we see, from a business model standpoint, this accelerating, taking off. That's how you realize the insane value that's had, and of course, you need a boatload of labels and machine learning infrastructure to support that. So
yeah, we'll get to that in a second. One thing that I think has been has been really shrewd and smart with how your strategy at Luminar is that obviously for the ever since 2016, 2017, and we're obviously scale was obviously very deep in the industry as well. Autonomy was the dream that really inspired everybody, and autonomy became the sort of goal for many people. Every company was focused on autonomy. It was sort of the dream of many financiers, and it sort of became the if you're not playing for L4, L5 autonomy, then what are you even playing for, right? And I think one of the things that you did at Luminar, which was very smart, was being consistent in your focus on, hey, we're gonna keep focusing on the large-scale consumer vehicles, and we're going to be focused on safety. And you didn't get caught up in all of the autonomous vehicle hype per se, and you were staying focused on this use case that I think now is obviously bearing a lot of fruit, and the strategy is bearing a lot of fruit in sort of these large-scale deployments that you have. What was sort of, you mentioned obviously that the safety requirements are very, very high, but what explain some of the thinking and the thought behind the sort of strategy that you've led Luminar with.
Yeah, no, and it's a great point on all of that. I think 5 years ago, everybody thought we were freaking crazy, going for the consumer vehicle space, and obviously that was the notion of where we're gonna, I think back in 2016, 2017, we were saying we're gonna welcome our robot overlords, everywhere by 2021, in every city, and for the robotaxi use case, which obviously. My belief is that this is as much a next decade, problem as it is this decade. Not that it's not promising, super promising over the long term there too. It's just very, very, very challenging to be able to solve by the time you really see those business models scale and take off. So that's where I think it became clear to realize this in the near term. We're going to have to take that much more focused approach at it and make it happen. So it was a big bet. With that, and I think most thought that there's no freaking way we're going to be able to do that, to actually break our way into the automakers and be able to have a product that could do that. And obviously now with the now working with the majority of the major automakers, that's completely evolved and just snowballed very, very positively. And as we really build a real business case, financial case, and make money on all this stuff. So it's exciting to do that in the industry. But yeah, no, I think we're gonna, we're continuing full speed ahead on all fronts, and it's gonna take a lot more to be able to make this happen, and just focusing in on, like I said, obviously beyond the Lidar and everything that's gone into it, industrialization, software scale, building up, we're building up our manufacturing plants in partnership with, Celestica and Fabrinet, a couple of key contract manufacturers between Mexico and Thailand. So, those are now coming online, and it's been, we've already done it for the pilot phase, and then, now for series production. I think that will be the pivotal moment, is that when we really achieve series production, that's going to be the transformation where I think it'll probably come to a surprise to many that, yeah, it's not the Googles and Apples and all those types of companies that would have the first next gen, safety / autonomy equipped vehicles out on the road, but like some random company, Luminar, that came out of nowhere. But for us, the vision has always been the same, but excited to see that through and make it happen, and we're still on track to actually that first start of production before the end of the year. So it's been good.
Yeah, I mean, that's incredible. I just want to reemphasize this because it's so critical. It's a classic, almost David and Goliath story where obviously there's, Google's had their self-driving car program. A lot of these large programs have existed and have scaled up their fleets and been collecting lots and lots of data. But through your approach, you've been able to sort of, you'll have developed these lidars that are on production vehicles all over the world, and you'll have a fleet that's scaling up, quite fast, and getting to production and actually sort of having impact on consumers' lives.
Yeah, exactly. So that's there's definitely an element of that, and that's what I'm most excited about, is that I think the whole notion around that we have to remove the driver and humans altogether to be able to make cars safer, since that was the original pitch around autonomy in the first place, was like saving lives, making cars safer. And you don't have to remove the driver altogether to make cars safer. We can save countless lives by just improving the existing vehicles, cars, programs, automakers that ship tens of millions of vehicles on an annualized basis. So, but yeah, it's not without a very competitive landscape. Like, unfortunately, that we've broken out of that there too, because we're just operating kind of in a different dimension than a lot of the rest of the AV landscape, so to say. So that's kind of insulated us from a lot of that the craziness. But I have to say, I think you took the smart approach there too, of like break out on your own to not have to try and compete with all the other big players, and just pioneer great technology from the ground up, which obviously is paid off big. It has its pros and cons when you have other people in the industry, but after you get that momentum with your own thing here too, I mean, it's great to see something like this coming together. It's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, we've always been passionate about AI as a technology. Autonomy obviously being one very exciting application of that, but AI is a technology far beyond autonomy on its own. And the last year or last 2 years have just really been incredible to see the sort of takeoff of AI technology being used for creativity and art and real enterprise problems, and it's been this incredible run. I kind of going back to it, another thing about Luminar that you mentioned, but I want to make sure we touch on, is your approach to be obviously not just a hardware company, but to be very invested in the software side of the stack and in building out the sort of this full stack of capability. Maybe walk us through that a little bit. And it's unusual compared to a lot of your peers in the Lidar industry to be focused so much on the software side, but you've obviously made a lot of big investments.
Yeah. We're kind of an interesting combination of things, because you have like some of the robo-taxi companies that have even gone aggressively tried to do their own Lidar that may or may not work out. And then you have other independent Lidar companies that, I don't know, at one point there was like 150 different efforts of trying to build Lidar to be able to make something happen. People see lucrative opportunities and try and go for it. And, every lab that was working on anything remotely related in America somehow became a Lidar company. So, of course, effectively almost all of that didn't work out. So now that said, we've really... as we kind of established the leadership within the Lidar game, and now with kind of more major commercial wins than the rest of the landscape combined. The question is no longer, it's not just about like, okay, what slice of the pie you're going to get or whatnot. It's how big can you make the pie in the first place. And the reality is that people are not developing software for next generation safety applications that are enabled by 3D data. Automakers generally haven't been strongly incentivized, by the way, to substantially improve the safety of their vehicles beyond whatever the minimum viable is to qualify you for like a 5-star safety rating, for example, and that, which is like, in this grand scheme of things, like a shockingly low bar. So that's where we just got to keep pushing the envelope. We got to make, leverage the software, not so we can try and like compete with everyone else, but rather how do we enable this kind of technology to really see the light of day in as many automakers as possible, because it's not like you can just take a stack from an existing AV company and apply it to this. It's actually a totally different problem that everyone else is solving. It's not a one-to-one. So that's what's really special about this, and kind of where we went all in, and that applies from both everything from the basics around the Lidar and obviously algorithms and processing, and like we actually make our own chips that even go into the Lidar itself. So all the way up through the stack, for the perception and controls and planning and everything else there too that we've continued to bring on along the way. Now again, part of the whole point is that we don't have 3,000 engineers that are working on this, and we don't need that either. And that's just because of the dramatically focused scope of what we have, and partnering with automakers and folks to do this and enable this. And that's where, turns out if you can know what's ahead of you, that reliably, with the 3D sensing, with centimeter level precision that our Lidar gives, that makes all the difference. So that's why a huge believer in software. Excited to obviously be working with you guys as part of this new scaled up partnership on all fronts. Then of course that requires, as I said, a huge amount of labels, but then also some of the rest of the infrastructure. That's where I'm a huge believer in partner where you can. I think sometimes people over aggressively will try and conglomerate things that you don't all have to do yourself. And the reality is that the same principle of why every automaker, not that everybody didn't try at one point, and every tier one and everything, but why they ended up ultimately adopting us. We see it's the same kind of model where you guys have the leverage and the economies of scale, and ultimately maybe an early adopter, but not the first company. And that's how you can support this and make that happen and build that infrastructure. And it seems like you're already seeing great success. So
yeah. And to your point, I think one of the things that we're so excited to partner on is specifically in solving a lot of these AI problems in 3D.
Exactly.
You guys have a very specialized, to your point, a specialized scope, which is very interesting, which is, taking a very 3D first approach, and how to use that to build, and the wealth of data that you're going to, you guys are going to be collecting and there's coming off of these vehicles. The Lidar scans themselves are incredibly dense and many terabytes or petabytes or however much data, but using all this data to build, this specialized machine learning stack that can therefore, power this next phase of safety.
Yeah, no, exactly, and I think that's also the unique thing, and that was part of the incentive of, I know you guys have had a great focus on 3D data, early on, and that's made a huge difference here, and I'd say that being able to process and work with and really take full advantage of that third dimension is everything, when it comes down to it. It just makes life so much easier there too, where, for example, like for the same, 2D label, you'll have to probably have orders of magnitude more data to just be able to qualify for the same kind of 3D label in terms of just information density when you take into consideration like every possible different lighting condition and position of object and every position along the z-axis that it can be, and how you can train your systems to do that. If you really know what's ahead and exactly what's going on, it doesn't change the fact that it still requires that same kind of infrastructure behind it, and AI processing and all the above to make that happen. But yeah, that third dimension is everything in being able to take this problem, out of not just make it a science experiment, but an actual deployable, functional, highly capable system, and with automakers, and that's why we've seen the adoption.
Yeah, that's super duper exciting, and we're excited to you all have managed to gain incredible scale yourselves in your partnerships and your manufacturing scale, and I think it's going to be, I certainly won't buy a car without a Luminar sensor now that I've not risked my life. So, I wanted to kind of look forward now and talk a little bit about the future of Luminar. And obviously, I know there's like limitations on what you can talk about as a public company, but obviously right now we've talked a lot about Lidars for consumer vehicles. I know you also have deployments on Lidars with plane companies, I'm pretty sure, like and
trucks, yeah,
and trucks, and a pretty wide variety of vehicles and use cases. What do you see as sort of maybe like looking forward a decade, the sort of future for Luminar, and what do you think are all the incredible applications that you're excited about?
Yeah, and there's a ton of stuff. There's a ton of like billion-dollar markets that you can go into that can make a huge difference. Of course, from everything that we see, the consumer vehicle market and to some extent the trucking market, that's the trillion-dollar market that we're really, really focused on, and that's where we benchmark everything to for that application and focus from both a safety and like autonomy perspective. Starting on highways, but yeah, the cool part is that you can. There's so many folks that are interested in leveraging this same kind of technology for other applications as well. Where we don't. The cool part about this, we actually only really have one product. Like we don't have a huge array of 100 different things. And part of it just because it's so insanely technically complex to be able to develop, and then you have this platform that you can then leverage, and we don't have to. Then build new like mini companies every time we want to go into a new vertical and sector. Is that actually it's sort of a superset of a lot of these other different applications already. So that's where, for example, when we were approached by, we publicly announced like previously a partnership with Airbus, their Up Next division, for example, and they approached us and be like, hey, like how do we take the same kind of tech and Lidar and everything that you have for cars and apply it to say helicopters or planes or other things like that, and VTOLs, of course. It turns out it's like some huge portion of helicopter accidents literally just happen because they like fly into wires, or land on them right ahead, and it's like stuff that you can't see visually, you can't really see well with the camera, but you can see super well here, and obviously not to mention flying at night, with stuff is a huge problem. Actually, driving at night is also a huge problem. It turns out the majority of accidents happen at night as well. And the cool part is Lidar actually sees the same exact thing, whether it's like bright sunlight shining into it or whether it's pitch black outside. So that's a cool part of it as well. And it, of course, in addition to the 3D data that you get out of it. But it's expanding, and I think obviously that flows down to with us and kind of sharing those wins and victories with the partners as well, and we'll only increase the needs and demand for your guys' stuff and everything you got going on. So it's good bets.
Yeah, no, and maybe we, in an earlier conversation today, we had a broad conversation about Moore's law and how that's enabled a lot of the expansion in artificial intelligence. And you mentioned this, and it's really interesting. So I don't want to gloss over it. But you kind of mentioned, for example, that you all build your own chips, and you have a lot of core capability in building your own chips. I'm kind of curious, how do you think that, why did you do it in the first place? And how do you think that's going to enable and enhance Luminar to be sort of build the best sensors and be strategically the most interesting safety company out there?
Yeah, no, it's a great one, and we're pretty crazy. Yeah, we do our own chips, we do our own subsystems. We really built everything from the ground up, and the fundamental reason why wasn't. Don't get me wrong, it's actually probably the last thing that we would have wanted to do. Like if you could buy off-the-shelf parts for this stuff. But the reality is they don't exist to be able to meet the performance requirements, the scalability requirements, the economics, of what you need to have a series production product that can go into consumer vehicles. So we really had to take full ownership of that. And we started building our first chips, over 5 years ago now, with a company, Black Forest Engineering, out of Colorado Springs. We actually ended up acquiring that company. It's about like 5 years ago. We ended up also acquiring a couple other companies, including the companies that we've exclusively partnered with, not just for that, but for the special material indium gallium arsenide that's required for the sensing of light, and even the laser chip company that we have, and in different locations dispersed throughout the U.S. And kind of bring that centralized such that we can have that full vertical integration. So that's something that's really special, probably a little bit of an overlooked aspect of what we do, but is part of the core technology engine that actually makes all of this possible. And we're already on, for example, like our 5th major generation of chip, that goes into the system to make this happen. So it's already seeing the fruition in the light of day, and that's how we make the business model work. So it's been good, and that all those different things that complements our presence. We have our largest office, headquarters out in Orlando, Florida, and then also second largest office actually out here in Palo Alto. So it's been good, and global footprint as well. I think we have a dozen different locations around the world with other automakers and whatnot as well. So it's been good, but that's still maintain a good presence out here too, and that's obviously where a lot of the great software talent is, of course, and continue to invest in that.
Yeah, and I'll close on one last question, which is or one last point, which is that your company's headquartered in Orlando, and you've actually done a lot of giving back to the Orlando community. I'm curious, what sort of inspired you to be giving back?
Yeah, it's one of those things that there's huge opportunities to be had that from both taking a look from our perspectives, but as well as just local community perspectives, and in the case of Orlando, where it turns out, by the way, there's like the highest concentration of these type of Lidar engineers out of anywhere in the world is in Orlando. That's part of why we were there, because of the Space Coast and defense industry and everything else. It's super overlooked, and I think a lot of the giving that ends up happening, ends up going to places, I don't know, like say San Francisco or other major cities on the West Coast and California and whatnot, and that was super overlooked. So I personally donated towards the end of last year about $70 million to the Central Florida Foundation to go help the local community there, and actually just did one to help the hurricane and flood as well. So yeah, it's a good start. I'm a huge believer that also I think it can be good. A lot of times people only end up giving away like by the time they're almost on their deathbed, and a huge believer that if you can actually make an impact earlier on in life to be able to really help the communities that you want to help, it can make all the difference, and you can use your own brain power to help make that impact, kind of like we do on the company side as well.
Yeah, that's just absolutely incredible. Well, thank you so much, Austin. Super excited about our partnership, and excited to be saving lives with the incredible Luminar sensor.
Thank you. Awesome stuff, man.